The last action step for a Reboot 33 challenge is right here. It's breathwork. And breathwork is, when I've brought it up to patients, they've typically, some have heard about it, some haven't. For myself, it's pretty much like the one kind of conscious way that we can tap into our autonomic nervous system, which is our automatic nervous system. So autonomic, I've said it multiple times on prior videos, but it's everything that's going on right now that I do not have conscious access to. The rhythm and pace of my heartbeat, how my lungs are even just breathing behind the scenes, my stomach, liver, spleen, how all those are working together, blood flow, getting to my muscles, getting to my organs, getting to my brain. Everything requires oxygen, everything requires blood flow, everything requires nerves. And the one that really makes it all go is energy, and energy requires oxygen, which is why we have to inhale and get into our body. What most people miss is that it's one thing to get oxygen from out here into our mouth and lungs, but it's a whole nother piece to get it from our lungs and dump it off into our blood cells, and then into the tissues that it's supposed to go into to help work and function. And it's an incredibly powerful way to influence our nervous system when we breathe rapidly and shallow. That's much more of a stress type breathing, almost like when running or at the end of a run, or when we're running away from, or when we see a tiger in the distance, or maybe just getting out of an argument or a bad conversation. Those kind of things, you start to notice that your heart rate comes up, your breathing gets shallow, and that's much more of our stressed state. When we're in a calm state, we should be able to have really deep, big, full breaths. We should be breathing through our nose most of the time. And we should be able to get full expansion of our lungs, and that's going to lead to lower blood pressure, lower heart rate. Overall body just feels more of a zen, kind of calm down. Brain is functioning at a much more of a smoother state versus a kind of a ramped, erratic purpose. And once again, the whole goal of this whole entire monthly challenge is to have everything zoned down, lower our stress levels, increase our tolerance to stress, and start bridging the gap from where we are to where we want to be. And with breath work, this doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just 1 minute, one breath. It doesn't matter. The main thing is that conscious tap in towards reconnecting to just being aware of how you're breathing, and then you can consciously change that. That has a big influence on your nervous system. That's a big influence on your body overall. So in our ebook, we researched quite a few different protocols, techniques. There's a ton of different approaches to breathwork because you can inhale, exhale however you want. You can hold your breath. You can exhale long and hold it. You can do it at different counts. Like, there's so many different variables. So it's like, which one do I try? I'm going to outline about 4 to 5 of them that I think are easy to implement, easy to learn, and that have a good bang for their buck, a good return on investment. So with that, I'm about to break these 4 down. You can try them along with me. But the first one is called diaphragmatic breathing. The second one is probably the most heard of, which is called box breathing. The third one that I think is beneficial, it's called more like deep breathing, but it's like 4, 7, 8 counts, more associated with sleep. And then the fourth one is called resonant breathing, which I typically end up having a lot of patients do after an adjustment, especially if they're more on the higher strung, hyperactive type nervous system patients. So those are just 4 basic ones. There's a lot more to it. There's an awesome book called Breath by James Nestor that is great to check out. I hyper recommend it. We're gonna get into it. So diaphragmatic breathing, this is all about your lower ribs. It's all about using your diaphragm. So our diaphragm is a muscle that sits right around here inside our rib cage that moves down and up. When it moves down when we inhale, and then it moves up when we exhale. So when we inhale, our diaphragm should be going downward, which acts like a piston sucking, creating a vacuum for air to go from out here basically a negative pressure gradient from air to go out here for air to then go into my lungs. Diaphragm works best when we breathe through our nose. There's a lot more stuff that says we should breathe through our nose versus breathing through our mouths. Breathing through our mouths leads to a lot of bad things. I'm just going to leave it at that. Breathe through your nose when you can, when you're aware of it, especially when doing breath work. So, breathe through my nose. I'm not focused about expanding my stomach out or just trying to get a big breath. I'm trying to feel my lower ribs go sideways, go laterally. That's what I want to notice when doing diaphragmatic breathing. So I'm going to find my lower ribs and kind of put my hands there. And then when I breathe, I want to actually feel my hands, the space of my hands go apart. Me personally, I'd rather do this lying down, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to do it sitting. So I'm going to breathe. I'm going to feel my hands literally go sideways, spreading out. If you can't see that, watch my hands. They're going to go sideways. Spreading out like that. That is diaphragmatic breathing. So you can do quite a few breaths of that. That's going to help you get down to your lower part of your lungs. Our lungs, the nerve distribution in our lungs are divided up into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So the sympathetic pieces, nerves parts of our lungs, those are in the upper parts of our lungs. So majority of the sympathetic nerves that go to our lungs, majority of those sympathetic ones are distributed in the upper part of our lungs, which is why majority of us chest breathe, shallow breathe. A lot of the calmer nerves are in the lower parts of our lungs, which is, and not a lot of us are really tapping into that. That takes more of an active, kind of conscious breathing pattern, whereas up here is more of an unconscious because a lot of the things that we're surrounded with are actual like natural stressors for humans, which is a little bit counterintuitive, right? So that's diaphragmatic breathing. Helps you get down to your lower lungs, helps your diaphragm expand. You also kind of feel your ribs, how they're supposed to move kind of more sideways versus just moving in this kind of a pattern. It's a great thing to practice. The second one is box breathing. This is one of the more common, popular ones, but you want to envision your breathing cycle operating like a box, where each face of the box is a 5-second count in your head. So your first phase is you inhale for 5 seconds. So the entire time, the entire 5 seconds, you are actively inhaling that whole time. So it's inhale. So I inhale that entire 5 seconds, not just 1 second of it. Then after that inhale, you hold for 5. So I'm inhaling. And then exhaling. And then hold again. So I just completed a full square. I inhaled for 5, held for 5, exhaled for 5, held for 5. So I imagined you do a box. So therefore, that's roughly 20 seconds. That means that you're only getting 3 breaths in for that whole minute. You can even go slower if you want, you can go faster if you want. But that way you're just kind of being conscious of not only your breathing, but also the pauses that you take within your breath. This is the typical breathing practice that Navy SEALs do. They kind of help calm them down, especially in the hyper-stress situations. That's why they're able to perform and prioritize and execute during their times of moments of combat. It's because they're able to use their breath to slow everything, their surroundings down, slow themselves down, so that way they can see the tiny details that otherwise might fit through the cracks. This is a great thing to practice throughout the day when you're in a stressful situation, just to re-tap in to your breath. Kind of helps re-ground and recenter you before you need to go and do the next big important thing that you got to do, or to help recalibrate your nervous system, which is what we're here for. The third one is, I guess it's called like slow breathing, but it's big for sleep. This one is all about having longer exhales than inhales. So with the big exhales, big long exhales, when we empty our lungs, now there's only really air in the bottom like third of my lung, which is where all those parasympathetic nerves are. So when we start to exhale for longer than we inhale, we're going to keep majority of that air down in our lower lungs, and we're not really going to have a whole lot going on in these upper lungs, so our whole system is going to go into that calm state. So I would imagine if you try this style of breathing, check your heart rate, and I'd be more than willing to bet that your heart rate is going to start dropping dramatically when doing this type of breathing. This can help calm your system down a ton, especially during a panic attack or when anxiety starts to kick in, your heart's racing maybe after an argument or something, or trying to calm yourself down after a big workout. This is an excellent style of breathing to do. And the count pattern for it is 4 seconds in, 7-second hold, 8-second exhale. And you just rinse and repeat that. And this is what a lot of people utilize to fall asleep, where they'll actually have their tongue to the roof of their mouth like this. And they'll still inhale through the nose. So inhale for 4. Hold for 7. And then exhale through mouth. Inhale for 4. Hold for 7. Exhale for 8. And even like that, I'm getting calmer and more zen, lower frequency, whatever you want to call it. But if I had my Apple Watch, I probably could do a demo of what it's doing to my heart rate, blood pressure. Everything is definitely just kind of zoned down when doing that. That's a great one to do. I think it's called slow breathing or like deep style breathing. But once again, 4-second inhale, 7-second hold, 8-second exhale. And you just rinse, repeat that until you kind of calm down. The last one that I'm going to go over is resonant breathing. This is the one that I instruct a lot of my patients to work through. It's a 5.5 seconds inhale, exhale, rebreathing, just into perpetuity. And I remember reading this in the book Breath, but it's called resonant breathing because that is the cadence and tempo that our organs like to work at. Super interesting. If you do that, 5.5 second inhale, 5.5 second exhale, you will get exactly 5.5 breaths in a given minute, which I find kind of unique that it all syncs up. But basically you inhale for 5.5, and then exhale for 5.5. Inhale for 5.5. Exhale for 5.5. And that's really actually the tempo and the length of breath we ought to have with just everyday living, doing cooking, typing, reading. That's the kind of breath we want to be blending in is the resonant breathing. There's also ones where you can do prolonged exhale holds, breathing into that last bottom 5%. Those are also really good ones to just do if you're not being terribly active. That's going to have more of a calming effect on your nervous system, more of a calming effect on your cardiovascular system. It's going to slow down your heart rate. It's going to lower your blood pressure. Oxygen will actually get off your red blood cells into your muscles and tissues, which is going to provide them the necessary resources for energy and repair and getting rid of bad cells. And that's just that's how we typically ought to breathe. And a lot of this needs to be done through our nose, nasal breathing. And if I were to prescribe a way to do this, the best way to do this for Reboot 33 is just start with like a 5 minutes worth. Just set a timer, just do the breathing, and then if you notice any kind of tingling or calmness going down, just sit in it. And that's a great way to get a little meditation or a little prayer in. makes it super simple to just start combining these two into one. My typical flow of action is I like to move every morning, then do cold exposure, then do like a breath work into a meditation, and then do the journaling. So that way I'm able to get all of it in, and it all kind of makes sense. Works for me. Obviously, the whole purpose of this is for you to identify how to make these habits work for you, and then that way you can incorporate it ideally into a lifestyle, and then you start to notice the gains that come from tapping into your nervous system. And that's part of the whole purpose of breath work. So it's super potent practice. I've been, I guess, exposed to it for like almost 3 years now. Wow. Almost 3 years now, been exposed to breath work. And it's great. I love it. I don't do it as often as I used to, just I'm a little bit more tapped in, but maybe that's something I ought to get back into. And it's definitely something that you should check out and tap into as well. So